I've got all the conventional sort of monitoring that you'd expect to see in terms of like NS10s and some Genelecs for a full range thing, the Oratones. So that's the normal sort of stuff you'd see most places. But the way we've wired the studio, I've got the mix bus split out about 10 different ways. And so I've permanently got various things wired up that are playing the mix bus through in terms of like little stereos, little systems like these things, and I can switch to them pretty much at any time through the mix, and I'm constantly switching between one or the other because whatever mix I'm working on, they're not going to hear it in a studio. It needs to translate basically, and sometimes, especially with decent speakers, it's like everything's going to sound great on decent speakers, so you're just fooling yourself. So I think it's just really important to make sure that everything translates across the board. And you might have like I've got two different ghetto blasters here at the back, and they sound completely different. One's got like way too much sub in it, and the other's completely the opposite. So straight away, if my bottom end's not right, I'll know on that little boom box. The Genelecs will handle the bottom end no problem. So you know, it's just really important. And I've also got some of those stems from the mix bus going through to next door. So we've got the TV wired up, various things in the kitchen, just so I can sort of get out of the room and just hear stuff back in a different environment. It just seems really important to me. The studios, for me, is like it's not a normal listening environment. So the way I'd listen to something here, I'll hear it differently when I hear it on the radio or whatever. So I try and fool my brain into thinking I'm not in the studio, and that can be as simple as literally just turning away from the desk, because we're so used to listening to speakers that are in front of us, in front of all this equipment. It affects the brain in a different way. Whereas if I just turn around and listen to this little ghetto blaster, I'm hearing it in a completely different way, like the end user would, and that for me really works. So a lot of the time, I'll just be turning away from the studio or walk next door, and it's just a nicer listening experience, and things poke out that don't so much poke out when you've got all these visual bits of feedback. At times I try and either turn the screens off or just try and limit my visual feedback from the gear as much as possible. Pretty much like the old days, really. You know, when working on analog systems, you're not getting a massive amount of feedback visually. You know, meters really, and a few lights here and there, and that's it. You know, so you just, your ears are zoned in so much more. So we lose that nowadays, I think, with all these screens telling us information, dBs, hertz, and all that sort of thing on screen, and we don't need that stuff really. I find it a lot easier to just switch off from it, and this is where the control surfaces come in as well. You know, the icon and all those type of things that, for me, since we installed the icon, it's I'm just listening a lot more. You know, for a couple of years when I had before I got the icon, I was mixing on screens. I was finding that I was making decisions based on frequencies that I can see on the screen rather than using my ears, and I think that's a big mistake really, I think, in a lot of ways, and something that I had to sort of snap out of, because as I say, like, it doesn't really matter whether something looks a bit odd on screen or if something's clipping and you think, oh, that shouldn't clip. If it sounds right, it sounds good and exciting, then I'm not so worried if things are clipping, or if I think I shouldn't have boosted it 1K, 10 dB or something. It doesn't really matter if it sounds great. So I just, you know, it's what comes out of the speakers that matters really.